Good morning. My name is Dave Anderson. I head up Energy Services Research at Barclays, and thank you for joining us on our Middle East trip. Our next presenter is Mr. Sherif Foda, CEO of NESR. He has served as NESR's chairman and CEO since its inception in 2017. Until then, he spent his entire career at Schlumberger, where he started in 1999. I got to know Sherif many years ago when he ran the Arabian businesses for Schlumberger, and later as president of production and then senior advisor to the chairman. With his deep understanding of Middle Eastern culture and relationships with the NOCs, few CEOs can talk about the Middle East quite like Sherif can, and we thank you very much for joining us today. Who is coming from Oman, from Muscat, Oman. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, David. Pleasure to be here as always.
So let's just start with an overview. Just give us a sense of what's going on today in the Middle East. What's going on the ground in terms of an activity buildup? We've been hearing about it for some time. So can you just kind of help us understand, just kind of in general, that maybe get a little more specifics on some of the countries of how it's going to roll out? Be great to hear.
Yeah, thanks. As we have we've been talking, and as we have seen, and as some of the public information was out there, the Middle East is obviously picking up pace a bit later than expected in some of the countries. But the majority of it, as people might know, is there is a lot of it goes to the government budget approval process that usually happen during the first quarter of the year. And then you had the holy month of Ramadan, where things get a bit slower than normal, which took place in the month of April. And then you can see, obviously, with the continuation of the commodity price appreciation, there is a lot of activity being put in place, and for the OPEC Plus to meet their quota, and obviously to have a buffer for some of the increase of the activity and oil production that they are anticipating. So I would say, if you take some specific, you saw the Aramco announcement of their budget increase, significant price increase, their budget in 2022, and their 3 years budget that they laid down very clearly by their CEO, and as well a lot of the projects to be able to meet their initiative, which is the Saudi Green Initiative, and the initiative of the kingdom to move by 2030 to 50% renewable and 50% gas. So basically the majority of the oil to be exported. And you have, as you have seen, they committed to 13 million barrel per day production, sustainable, and they have the capacity as well with a 50% increase of the gas production. That translates to a significant increase of rig count, and a lot of it comes from offshore. And as you have seen as well, they have announced awards to drilling contractors, new build, and new land rigs as well. So this is between jackups and land rigs. And that activity increase would be unprecedented since the Saudi big rig increase back in 2008, 2014, etc. I mean, today you can have basically the best, I would say, rig count, or the highest rig count in the history of Saudi. Similarly, you have UAE with their commitment by His Excellency Dr. Sultan and everybody of the 5 million barrel per day by 2030, and then they as well the commitment of the same thing of moving a lot to gas and having the net zero initiative, which basically called for decarbonizing, and a lot of the work has to happen. And actually you saw as well their announcement of their internal ADNOC utilization of a lot of renewable, etc., and gas, replacing the diesel and replacing a lot of the activities, which means, again, a lot of the islands going to be approved, more island work, more jackups, and as well they have, as you have seen, signed some IOCs and others in the blocks in the different ADNOC fields. And then you have the Kuwait, which is a bit of a, I would say, a slower pace in the sense of the quota, but again, they have a commitment of the 4 million barrel production per day. All this will translate, and obviously you have Qatar with the gas, you have Oman. I'm here in Oman. I just saw the clients. I spent the whole day with them, and they have, again, they were always steady. I would say they never really dropped with the activity drop before in the last 4 or 5 years, and they have, again, gradual increase, and they are looking into gas, increase of gas. They actually signed a deal yesterday with the joint operating for some of the gas work, even with Iran, with neighboring country. They have deals with Saudi as well. So there is a lot of things going on. I think I would say if you translate that to some of it to the North America speed, it's always there is a lag of 6 to 9 months. And people that followed the market and that increase in the upturn over the past 3 to 4 times, they saw there is always North America always comes as first, because obviously the dynamic and the supply chain and the way the contracting works is more of a more independent, more easier to work versus a long-term contracts that you have here with some of the budget approval that comes from a government, and then the government goes to the department, and the department goes to approve by the different areas, and then translate this to work. And that's why some people say, well, but they don't increase as much. They do, but it takes longer time than the norm. And that's why you're going to see, I would say, a hockey stick in H2 in the second half of the year, and definitely a very sharp 23 over 22, which is, in my opinion, above 20%.
Sherif, all of the work you just described has been well telegraphed for some time. All of this was well before February 24th. So things have changed, obviously, quite a bit since then. So what have you heard from your customers, your NOC customers? How has this changed their view, either in a sense of urgency or how they think about oil demand or their own supply? What's kind of changed in those discussions, or the tone, or essentially, what does this mean to your NOCs, your NOC customers?
To put it quite frankly, did not change much. So there is an activity plan, a budget increase, always has been for the lack of investment over 6 to 7 years. They know that, and oil price is going to be strong for a while. They've been saying it. They've been advocating that people have to increase activity because it's going to catch up to you, that you don't invest and there is a decline curve. And the oil price is going to stay strong. And people need to put the investment. And they've been saying that we are the long-term investor. We are the one that always don't play with the cycle. We remain steady and we're going to increase. Same token, I would say that they do not see, they think that this is a blip of the geopolitical conflict. It is not a reflection of really the lack of supply. It is, I wouldn't say artificial, but it is not because of the investment is a fact, but that kind of, if you like, sanction or some issues or stuff like that, it's not due to the lack of supply. Today, the supply, the plan that they put in place is adequate, and that is irrelevant, if you like, with the very short-term sanction on, if you like, Russian oil, right? So that is what is not, I'm not going to go and replace that. First of all, it's physically almost impossible to do. And you cannot just go and increase a blip of that point because of that urgency over a very short term. I think that what they've been advocating, all of them, is this is stability. We plan for the future. OPEC Plus has a very good sense of supply and demand. The supply and demand is kind of balanced now. Now it's unbalanced artificially because of the geopolitics, not because of really the issues. So I wouldn't say that they are adding 50 rigs all of a sudden because I need to get this kind of oil all of a sudden. They are not. And I don't, obviously I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but I don't see it on the ground that there is any sort of that kind of emergency or something, right? And again, I tend personally to agree, because if you look at the supply and demand, it is kind of balanced. There is a bit of a shortage because of obviously that sort of geopolitics. There is obviously the other part of the equation where people are worried about a short-term recession or something, and a lack of demand. So then you don't want as well to go to the same idea of just throwing a lot of things with the supply chain constraint. Actually, it's going to increase your cost dramatically, and you might not get anything out of it in the very short term. And maybe you don't need that, and then you start to cut again, right? So they want to maintain, again, that kind of stability in the oil and the supply and demand. Yeah, people have to remember as well one very important part, because I think a lot of, even in my discussion, usually in North America, people forget that this is not a company, this is a country. This oil and gas industry and infrastructure is the country itself, right? It is the whole GDP, it is the whole employment, it's the whole supply chain. So you cannot actually play that up and down, as they don't cut. Even when the oil price goes to 20, they still maintain a certain employment, a certain fundamental stability. So they cannot as well sharp increase it, because then they're going to have a problem on the other side.
That makes a lot of sense, especially if we're concerned about demand. I could see why they'd be holding off or a little bit. So when we think about this activity mobilizing, I totally understand the procurement process and the timing and everything it takes a while, but is anything else holding back the cadence of activity? One of the things we've talked about over the last really 2 years has been COVID, and how that's really restricted the movement of people. You are basically, your entire workforce is Middle Eastern, so you've been in country. So maybe you're a little bit different, but is there a labor concern of getting people in there? Is that yet? And then of course, I'm really interested in kind of supply chain issues, where you see in the US what's going on, and people are struggling to get anything now these days. It hasn't really seemed to hit the Middle East yet. Of course, they haven't increased activity yet. So how are they thinking about that? Or is that being factored in at all?
Yes, has been factored in. And I think part of what I was saying earlier, it's a bit physically impossible. It's part of it is supply chain. So they know, even if they want to add this amount, they will have an issue, right? Because of this, the global supply chain issue. So if I split the question into a couple of parts, the what is lucky here that is not in the US is labor. We do not, the Middle East in general, do not have a problem with labor. We have labor. The industry still attract the majority of the talents. The industry is still looked upon as the major engine of the GDP and the growth of the countries. So we can attract talent. So I do not have a problem to, let's say, to man or to staff any additional frac crew or cold chipping or anything like that. We can manage. There is some obviously talent gap and some inflation of labor, but nothing compared to the US, right? Nothing compared to the US. So yes, we can manage with the labor. And now with the COVID restriction lifted, we can get back the majority of the workforce that comes usually from Southeast Asia, right? So we have that workforce available, and today we can staff the rigs. If I look at the supply chain from the tools and some of the shortage, yes, we do suffer, right? So if I go tomorrow and say, I need to add, and whatever client, I want to add another 20 rigs, and I want a rotary steerable kit, and I want all these chemicals, I want this mud product, they will have a problem, because there will be, this stuff comes from the same suppliers, and they're gonna have an issue. The stuff that is localized, if you like, is manageable, but the rest is not manageable. It is still depend on the global supply chain to be able to work it out, right? So, and obviously there is an inflation of cost. So today I was talking to one of our customers, very close, very close friend, and he was showing me, for example, labor inflation anywhere between 3 to 8%. And I told him, that's nothing, my friend. That's absolutely nothing. But then he told me, oh, but the pipe, I have 30%, 40%, and I have some chemicals that increase by 80%. And if I add another 5 rigs and staff them, I'm going to have this additional cost, which obviously I tell him, okay, but you have as well the gain of $50 more. So another $2 of cost. It's okay, my friend. Right? So obviously that obvious discussion always comes because I'm asking for price increase, but it is as well overall, what is his cost structure? Yes, they see a cost structure increasing in a magnitude of 20% or something, which is again for their cost structure. And I keep repeating that for the Middle East as the lowest cost producer, honestly speaking, it's nothing.
Right. Now,
compared to the gain you make.
Now, you can say it's nothing, but do they think it's nothing? I mean, I guess.
No, they don't. They say it is something, and they have to manage that, and they need to manage it. But if I look at the rig rate, anything compared to the US is a minuscule, right? I mean, the US went from 20 to 35, right? Here you're talking about something went from 20 to 25. So it's still is the magnitude of the rate or the increase of price is manageable, because again, it's part of it is steel, labor, and shipping and diesel. So how to manage that is basically the equation that today they can manage that. And in a way, I think some of the clients overall still underestimate the complexity of the supplier starting to prioritize and changing their mindset where to ship first if I'm not getting any traction of price. And that's some of the discussion I'm having with the clients. Guys, security of supply today is more important than price, if I were in your shoes. So I would secure the supplies because I don't want those guys to go somewhere else. And that's now, if they have a limited resources and they are not getting any traction on their passing all that increase of price they have, they're going to start to go elsewhere.
So if we think about whether or not it's rigs or any other different parts of the supply chain, if you think out the next kind of 6 to 12 months, like if you were in their shoes, what would be, once again, let's go in their shoes, what would be sort of the 3 things that they should focus on in terms of supply chain? Is it securing rigs? What is it? What do you think is going to get tightest the most? What's going to be the hardest thing to get? What's going to see the biggest inflationary impact, do you think?
I think the rigs, they are securing it. That's why they are scared of it. So they are securing it. They made a very good job in nationalizing a lot of their crews and rigs. They have a lot of local rigs that are here. They just need to pay them the money to put this rig back to be, operationally. Some of those cold stack rig, they underestimate the complexity, but it's manageable. But it's going to be an inflation. And I think they are mindset. They know that they're going to pay more for rig time. I think the chemistry story is underestimated, totally underestimated. And they had a very big discussion with some. And I think the high tier tools is going to be an issue. So all the direction drilling, all this is going to be an issue. And I don't want to say I am playing down, but I think some of the customer are still, because they don't get that very strong feedback from maybe the service industry, they think they will manage that. But I think they are underestimating that this is going to be an issue, because they won't get that quality tools on their rigs to be able to fulfill the budget that they have. I put it this way, I think that some of the budget will not be spent because of lack of supplies.
You've mentioned that to me before, and you're feeling stronger about that today, that you think that they want to spend more than they can in general. Yes. Is that fair? Yes. So does that give you...
Because they underestimate. I mean, they listen to someone. So Sherif came and said, yes, he can. But when I called Sherif in a month, the story will be different. So, and that's why I said, guys, I'm forthcoming, and the industry has to forthcome to tell you what will be the issue, because everybody is going to call for the same thing at the same time, because all of you assign and approve the budget at the same time, and then all of you will need the same thing, but you would still do not kind of accept the fact that you need to pay that amount more, because it's not because we want to change the price, because that is the real cost. So some of the people are not realizing how much it will really cost them to ship, to send, to do all the stuff. And I give you an example. If today you have a block on a ship to send something from A to B, let's say from Houston to Kuwait, you don't take it. You lost that window, you wait another 2 months. It's not like tomorrow you're gonna send it to the next ship. So even if you don't give me the award, I will not be able to ship it to you because you are delaying some of this work. And then I'm gonna start to move things around from the equipment that I have in the region for the best priority or where I need to deliver. And I think more and more of this discussion, the customer have to realize, because again, I think when they all ask for the same thing in Q3, not everybody will be able to deliver.
So sure,
I have a buffer, for example. Not everybody has a buffer.
So I'm trying to remember the first time we met. I'm guessing it was probably sometime around 2010 or 2011, when you were kind of running that Saudi business over there for Schlumberger. You know, one of the things I've been directed back from your former boss was pointed me to 2004 as sort of an analogy of kind of what's happening today. Can you talk about that era a little bit, kind of that 04 to 08 timeframe? Boy, it sure feels like something very similar. And of course, all your customers know their history very, very well. Do they see something similar here? I mean, that market all of a sudden, you know, went from 50 to 150 rigs. I don't know how tight the market got. I was pretty young at those days as a young analyst. So maybe if you wouldn't mind just refreshing or help me maybe educate our listeners here as kind of what happened that time frame in terms of equipment and supply chain. Did things just kind of pick up? And do you see those similarities today to what happened back then, almost 20 years ago, when the cycle really took off back then?
I always say that I think it's identical. And what I always say to the people, this cycle, it is not 14 cycle, this is 2005 cycle, which is basically 2004, as you rightly said. And I was there, I was in Oman actually, and then 2005 I was in Paris. And exactly the same thing. Customer asking for prices, customer does not want to discuss any the negotiation about, you know, the supplies. We have issues. No, you don't have issues. You manage it. Go get me the problem. This is not your issue. Then 2005 comes, and then more and more. There's nothing. Then by Q3 2005, I remember very well. I had a very good discussion at the time with Exxon. And I said, guys, you know, in a quarter, you're gonna ask me. I'm gonna tell you I cannot, even if you pay me 50% more. I won't. It's not because I don't want, I love you, but I won't be able to. I don't have. So let's make the deal quickly. Let's get these resources very fast. And then some of the customer realize that security of supply, I'm repeating this, is more important than the price negotiation. So they secured their supplies. They were the winners. The guys that kept negotiating took basically the less equipped suppliers, and then they start to have basically very poor quality, because that's whatever is left that was not contracted. And that's exactly what you see now. We are today when we are at the beginning of 2005. We are not yet where they call you and you don't have. This is going to happen same time, same year. In my opinion, Q3, Q4, you're going to have exactly the same issue where you call, even if we don't discuss price, I don't have, because I already contracted them all. I don't have a buffer anymore. The industry has a buffer. The buffer cleans up. It's the same thing. And then you start to use from what you have. And then you start to say, no, I don't have. I'm sorry. This is what I have today. This is the only thing I have. You want the other one? Let's renegotiate the specs or renegotiate the price, because what I have now is the only available kit in town. And this stays for sometimes, then the industry start to build again, because that's how it works. Now you start to get capex, you get capex approved, you go to your NOV, your Schuler Blackman, whatever, and you say, guys, okay, I'm gonna pay whatever you need. Start making me kits. I want pipe, I want non-mag, I want equipment, la 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 la. I want cement units, etc., etc. But let's assign units, rigs, etc. So it's the same cycle exactly, and we will go to the same thing. Some customer already securing the supply, some are not, but you will have this issue because there is no, let's put it this way, there is no fat in the system anymore. There's no buffer. You are lean, you are 8% fat in your body. So that's it. There is nothing you can just take from, right? So no supplier today has 10 packages sitting in the yard. Maybe you have 5, but those 5 will be taken in the next quarter.
So that 8% body fat, that's a great analogy for the industry. I think that's probably fair across the board. So I'm just looking at kind of some of the contracts that you guys have announced over the last year, and I mean, I'm counting 5, hundreds of millions, 5 contracts, all valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. What about the equipment and the capacity required for those? When all of that's sort of deployed, I mean, what does that leave you? Are you in a place where you're going to have to start adding some equipment? How do you think about that? Because at the same time, you haven't been very happy with pricing. And for the exact reasons you've just highlighted, we're at this kind of funny time in which pricing is not there, but you have to kind of figure this out. So how do you factor in, do I build? Do I hold off? What do I do? So how do you think about your capacity in light of the contracts that are all starting, and obviously in light of future work to come?
So for NESR, what we're doing, as you said, we have multiple awards. We are managing this because I have a buffer. Plus, I pre-ordered everything since last year. Everything is coming, so I'm very well managing all my increases that are coming. I will be able to manage it on time with all my customers. Now, more work will come, which I am sure of, sudden, because again of what I just said over the last 15 minutes. And then we'll have to prioritize. I am not going to build equipment anymore based on some of this very poor pricing. So some of the very poor pricing contract where the cost increased dramatically, we will have to go and have a serious discussion with our customer. And if there is no solution, then we will have to divert those equipment to the better performing assets. Because there is the guys have to compete internally for capex now, and I cannot just go and keep building, because even if I call today, let me call NOV tomorrow and ask them for another 10 cold tubing or 10 slake line package, they will deliver first delivery today. If I didn't order it, it's next year. So if the customer tells me no, we have to start Q3, I cannot. So then if I have in Q3, I have 3 contracts that are losing money in another country, I'm gonna redeploy them in those contracts. And I think that is what you're gonna see more and more of all the service industry, which happens before. Again, you start to redeploy your equipment. Obviously you have to be very very close. That's why I go to the customer ahead of time. So I had that conversation, for example, with a couple of customers in February. Very detailed discussion with 2 customers. One of them, I told them, this contract that I have, it's valid until 2026. This contract today with the new supply chain environment is actually went from plus 30% to minus 20%. It's a negative contract because I pay for diesel and you remove the subsidy, I pay for camp. I cannot continue with this contract. Please, either let's readjust it, or maybe I am not very efficient in doing it. Somebody else will be. And I recommend that you go and ask my competitors to take it over, because I don't want to do it, because I cannot, right? And very, very candid, we are very close friends. We are very, and the customer said, no, I will not adjust the price of this contract. It's valid until 26. You have to live with it. I said, fine, please call somebody else to do it. And we are assigning that contract now to somebody else. And we are very good friends, very happy. And I'm moving out of this contract. Somebody else will take it. And I'm taking all this equipment and moving to another country. So that's the kind of conversation we have to have in a very adult. And the customer, I tell them, the customer is always right. If this is the right thing for you, you don't want to change the price, and somebody else will do it better, it's better for you, 100%, and it's better for me. So it's a win-win situation, and I'm moving out of that contract. And it is valid until another 3 years. I don't want to do it. It's not I don't want to do it. I cannot do it because I lose money doing it. Because I'm going to keep the same standard to do it. So I'm shutting it down and I'm moving everything out. The good news is there is so much activity going on. As you said, I won so many contracts. So I'm taking this, going to another country and deploying it.
So just to clarify, just to make sure the audience understands, when you said this contract's out to 2026, essentially the pricing is set on this contract out to 2026, and you can either take the work, turn the work down, correct?
Yes, it's a call-out contract. As people try to understand, the majority of the Middle East is a fixed contract. All the Middle East contracts are fixed contracts. There is some adjustment in price that's very small. So you have to go and sit and negotiate with the customer. The customer is always very, very good. So you sit, you say, okay, guys, this is now the reality. It's almost like a force majeure, right? So this is the reality. Let's adjust some of the line items of the price. And the contract is fixed, but however it is. So they tell you, okay, but Mr. X is happy with this price. You are not happy with this price. So I'm not changing it. So I say, okay, give it to Mr. X. I'm happy to leave. And that's exactly what I did. So I shut it down and I moved out. And I have another 3.5 years valid in this contract. So obviously shutting it down does not mean that I cancel that contract. It's basically, I do not do anything in that scope, right? And my competitor now has 90% of the scope. We used to be 60-40. Now the 40%, I give him my 60%. So he's like 90% of the work, or almost 100%.
So the contract's still going on. It's just you're not engaging in the contract right now.
Yeah. Yeah. They call me. I said every time now they call, and actually they checked with me last week. Sherif, do you want another package? I said, guys, I already gave you back my 4 packages to my competitor. Right. Anything addition you have, give it to him. I have no interest to do this work at all. I cannot do it.
So we just got a question came in from an investor. It was asking something similar here. It says, can you talk about how long you think it's going to take to get confidence that competitors stop being aggressive on price, despite this sort of demand strength and supply weakness? And what's your take? I mean, is your sense? I've definitely noticed some frustration from you. I think you've said it publicly about kind of the pricing dynamics. I mean, is that still ongoing? Is that just sort of the beginning of this? Do you think that's getting better, or do you think the pricing discipline is coming around?
Yes, pricing discipline is coming around. Everybody is talking the same language. People are seeing their cost becoming prohibitive to do some work. Contract went from positive to seriously negative. So people will not, because now there is so many other demand. So this excess supply is drying and people are moving equipment to another country to do the work. And as I keep saying, I said it before in Q3 last year, I always predicted, I would say after Ramadan, after April, you will see the change of behavior. It is happening. And I think Q3, you will see a serious change of behavior because all those rigs and all those activities that the client has been talking about is going to go into action, and people are going to decline jobs. And the minute the people decline jobs, then the customer say, oh, now I need to go to security of supply, back to our discussion of 2005. Oh, now I need security of supply, and I need good people and good equipment to do the work, not just bodies, right? So then they start to reflect that, and they know that the technology has a certain limit. You need to have a certain scale to be able to operate and execute some of this work.
So the work has to start first before all of this happens. And so the idea is once it starts to mobilize, it is happening,
as I said. It is happening. I mean, as I said, Saudi today is the highest rig count already since years, right? Kuwait is picking up rigs. Oman here is picking up rigs. Everybody's picking up. Algeria is picking up rigs big time. Egypt is picking up rigs. Libya is waiting on the geopolitical situation to get solved, and then they pick up rigs. Abu Dhabi is picking up rigs, picking up rigless activity. You need to fix a lot of the ESP and get the production back, etc., etc. Everybody is already ramping up. So in 2 months from now, everybody's ramping. All this equipment and people around that is still existing will be used. Then people will start to be, I would say, more aggressive. Is that basically because it becomes a physical impossibility to add something you don't have. So immediately you're going to start to ask for price because you don't have. It becomes an easier pricing discussion. It's exactly like the rig, 2,000 horsepower rig, there's none. Somebody wants another rig, the people ask for 25% increase because there's none.
Right, and it's security of supply, as you said. When that becomes a concern, that's when the whole tide changes. That makes a lot of sense. Sherif, you talked about being really capital disciplined and not willing to spend any money. And I've noted, or we've noted that you've formed a number of partnerships over the last few years to sort of, I guess, essentially help build out the services of NESR without having to commit to the businesses necessarily. Just look at a few of them in drilling motors or drill bits or frac rental equipment, steerable, things like that. Can you just kind of talk about that model and kind of how you think about that? And are there any kind of holes you think that you kind of need to fill, or anything kind of other areas that you're looking to kind of fill in there in terms of I don't know, skill sets, I guess, that going forward?
Look, obviously this is getting more and more exactly the same discussion. People are less attracted now because they are sold out in North America, right? That's the honest answer. So today, our partnership with, for example, Phoenix, Cactus, Otera, etc., is doing great, but the guys are sold out, and that's one of the discussion I had. So Phoenix, for example, in this trip, Mike came, the president came with me. We traveled. He went to Saudi. I came here. We have the same discussion with the customer. Please, guys, commit. We put all this kit in the Middle East, and these guys are almost number one direction drilling company now. So let's make sure what exactly the scope, etc., what you need, because we can't keep those kits forever, right? So now we are very busy. Same for Cactus, they're well ahead, So I think more and more of this is going well and securing it. The key for us is what we are working on very, very, very hard this year is our obviously rotary steerable package to deploy into the different countries. And that's, I think, the major thing that will really take us to, this is the gap that we have because the rest of the portfolio, we are quite strong. I think cold tubing, we are almost the largest company now in the Middle East, right? So between testing, cold tubing, frac, cementing, all this stuff, we are extremely well covered internally. We have very strong motor now with our obviously friends of Phoenix. The key is and Cactus with the wellhead. The key is really our rotary steerable and MWD, LWD. This is where we, our internal build is going to make a difference. And as you know, and as we are very vocal about it, our ESG portfolio is the big thing where we have 8 partnership, 6 investment, and we just talked today, for example, with both Shell, Oxy, all these guys about the decarbonization, sensor technology, water technology, all this good stuff. So this is where our partnership makes a huge difference. And we are looking for a lot of work on carbon sequestration and storage and hydrogen. And that's the 2 areas where we really need to find very good differentiator to partner with, because the region is really embarking on it.
And water as well, right? Isn't your water business is one of the other areas on the ESG side that you're watching pretty closely?
Yes. Water is, we are very close to water. I'm personally think that this is the thing that everybody's missing. And that's why we have the project running. So I have a project running in Saudi, project running in Iraq. And I think we should do much bigger project with the produced water as an industry, especially in a water scarcity in Middle East where there's no water. There's no water at all.
Right.
And we produce all this water and we dump it in the desert. So there is so much we can do.
Well, that's great. Well, I watched the sunset fall behind your back. So I guess this is probably a good sign of where we should stop our Middle East trip today. So you're in Oman. I hope to be in Oman next year. We always look forward to having you on our trip, Sherif. Thank you so much for your insight in the Middle East, and good luck in getting that pricing and start beating down those doors. Get that pricing up there because clearly activity levels are coming in. And yeah, I see the same thing. This looks like 04, 05 again, and some pretty exciting times in front of us. So looking forward to keeping up with you. Thank you very much, Sherif. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you.